people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, and now it's time for our weekend recap. We're going to kick it off with the WBC Silver Bantamweight title fight between Francesca Hennessy, the champion, and Aurora Persio, the challenger. And where initially I went with Francesca to win a points decision, she went a step further and actually stopped Aurora in the 6th round off of what were well-placed left hooks to the body. The left hook was the star of the show for Francesca Hennessy. It's a punch that she had a lot of success with. The contest starts, and as I predicted, Aurora Persio was the aggressive fighter coming forward, winging shots, wide shots, wild shots, giving Francesca Hennessy that which she could exploit, able to regularly get in with left hooks to the body as a result of Aurora not doing a good enough job of protecting herself. The gaps in between the punches were way too wide from Aurora. Her elbows were way too high. The body was right there. So like any good fighter would, Francesca Hennessy took advantage, regularly going there with left hooks to the body, weaving under the hooks and firing the left, in tandem with finishing her combinations with the left. You'd see her connect with a right hand, then follow it with a left hook to the body. You'd see her weave under the hooks from Aurora, then follow it with a left to the body, displaying her hand speed and compact punches by throwing a left to the body, then a left to the head. The left hook was a very important punch for Francesca Hennessy in this fight, to where by the 4th round, Aurora Persio was already spent. She was already exhausted. And from the 4th round onward, Francesca Hennessy just started teeing off. I said it from the get-go. Aurora Persio definitely has something. She's got good dimensions for the weight. She's got some strength and some length. But being based out of Italy, she's really not going to get much exposure to world-level opponents and world-level sparring. That the issue for Aurora is the learning curve. At what rate is she progressing based on where she's based out of? Francesca Hennessy is a lot further along than I initially gave her credit for. I picked her to win a points decision. She went a step further and forced a stoppage. But on that premise and beating Aurora, does that mean she's ready for Dina Thorsland? Does that mean she's ready for Shernika Johnson? And I would still say no. Now, those two fighters would offer up a lot more for Francesca to deal with than Aurora Persio just did. The best thing for Fran is to just keep doing what she's doing, making defenses of that WBC silver title, in effect racking up experience, because it could be a while before she's ready for either of those fighters that are now set to face each other towards the end of the summer. If I'm Francesca Hennessy's team, if I'm Ben Shalom and I'm at Boxer, I would hold off putting Francesca Hennessy in a full title fight at any point this year. I'd hold that off until next year. She's really young, so what's the rush? There's no need to force her into a situation she may not be ready for. And the bantamweight division offers up enough contenders that Fran Hennessy can adequately gain the experience she needs to not only be ready to fight for a title, but be ready to win one and ready to defend one. That she doesn't need to go looking to do that now, this year. Advancing to a professional record of 9-0, banking her 2nd recorded knockout in what was her 2nd fight this year. The first was in January, the 2nd was yesterday, leaving plenty of time to get her back out towards the end of the summer and maybe again in the winter. Because what she needs right now, more than just alphabet titles or rounds in the bank, what she needs more than anything right now is more experience. The two champions at this weight have both been champions at 2 separate weights. These are very, very experienced fighters. Fran and her team should just let them settle up with each other and continue to amass more rounds, more experience. She looked sensational yesterday, better than I thought she would, fighting out of that Philly shell, throwing those compact counters, those left hooks to the body, those straight rights down the middle. A fan-friendly fighter that also doubles as a slickster, Fran doesn't run from the fire. She doesn't try to stay out of the pocket. She tries to work in it, rolling and countering, slipping and countering, catching and countering. Proof that you can still be defensively responsible while also being entertaining. You can be defensively responsible within close quarters. Congratulations to her. Over to the light heavyweight title fight in Russia, where Dmitry Bivol made his big ring return following back surgery for what was a herniated disc. After his big revenge win over Artur Beterbiev and becoming this division's undisputed champion, he finally decided to have that nagging injury taken care of, and so there was some emphasis on how is he gonna look when he comes back, because back injuries, they can have a lasting effect. They can stay with you for a long time. It wasn't ever really a question of whether or not Dmitry would win against Michael so much as how would he look winning, and he looked sensational. He looked like vintage Bivol, doesn't look to have lost a step, doesn't look to have lost any of his finer qualities, scoring an early knockdown in the first off a well-placed counter left hand. Michael Eiffert off to a horrific start in a fight where I didn't see him win a round. Resurgical performance from the cerebral Dmitry Bivol, who, unlike Michael Eiffert, was very efficient in his approach while being accurate, showing poise, showing control, and not wasting any energy like Michael Eiffert, because throughout the fight I noticed how much movement you were seeing from Michael. He's on his toes, he's bouncing up and down, back and forth, and he's doing this for, 3 minutes at a time.
While he's getting hit.
While he's trying for punches, leaping left hooks, and losing his shape in the process, I noticed how much movement was wasted and how much energy was spent from Michael just bouncing up and down, back and forth, whereas Dmitry was a lot more centered and a lot more calm, not wasting any energy, just doing what he needs to, exactly when he needed to. Fighting in bursts, exploding with 3 and 4 and 5 punch combinations on Michael Eiffert, not a sustained attack, because there were plenty of quiet moments in the fight, but every so often Dmitry Bivol would let a salvo of punches go, and there was very little that Michael Eiffert could do about it. But hang on, as stated, I had the fight 12-0.
I didn't see Michael win a round.
I feel like the only reason Michael was even able to hear the final bell is because Dmitry Bivol let him. In a manner of speaking, as the fight progresses and you're getting into the tail end of it, you can see that Michael Eiffert is tired. You can read his body language, see that he's losing his shape, and that if Dmitry Bivol wants to hit the gas and press for a stoppage, he actually can.
Just chose not to.
But that is sort of Dmitry Bivol's signature. He's only going to do exactly what he needs to when he needs to do it. For that reason, in previous years, some would have described him as a bit boring.
Bob Arum did.
By and large, one of the best and most fundamentally sound boxers in the sport of boxing, but not as charismatic in his approach as some other boxers. He's only going to do exactly what he needs to.
He could have stopped Michael yesterday, but he chose not to, and maybe it's for the best, because having been out so long and coming off of back surgery, what he needed more than anything were rounds in the bank.
More than a highlight reel knockout. We already know that you can beat a Michael Eiffert.
More than a highlight reel knockout.
Needed rounds in the bank, and so he got them with minimal wear and tear, because after the fight, Dmitry, he didn't have a scratch on him.
Now, big decisions await the champion after easing past his mandatory challenger, the Ring Magazine, IBF, and WBA, WBO light heavyweight champion Bivol. He was mandated to fight the inferior Eiffert, who had been waiting 3 years for his opportunity. Eiffert essentially served as both a tune-up fight and a mandatory challenger for the 35-year-old champion on his return from back surgery. The next bout for the Ring's number 6 rated pound-for-pound fighter, though, will be anything but a test run. Bivol now has to weigh his options, which include fulfilling his WBO obligation and facing mandatory challenger and interim champion Callum Smith, or dropping the belt, much like he did last year with his WBC title, instead of moving forward with an ordered fight against David Benavidez before his looming surgery. Bivol appears inclined to entertain the idea of a rubber match against Artur Beterbiev or an undisputed title fight against the WBC champion David Benavidez. The WBO already made it clear before this weekend that the winner would have to give Smith, the Ring's number 2 ranked contender at light heavyweight, The next crack at the apple, Matchroom Boxing head Eddie Hearn handles both Bivol and Smith, so we'll have to navigate the situation.
It's a win-win situation for Matchroom. You know, if Dmitry beats Callum, Matchroom continues to promote the best light heavyweight in the world.
If Callum beats him, same deal.
If Dmitry decides to forego the fight with Callum to fight Artur instead, the brown belt still stays on the Matchroom side of things with the others.
The belts will just be split between two of their fighters.
It was great to see Dmitry back, Hearn said. You saw him sort of take his time. I feel like he probably could have gotten Eiffert out of there, but great to bank the rounds after a very long period out with injury, and now Bivol has been ordered to fight Callum, who's got to get a shot. If Bivol does choose to fight Beterbiev or Benavidez, then it will be Callum versus Joshua Buatsi to run it back for the world title, which would be a massive fight. Dmitry is now ready to jump straight back into the biggest fights in the sport. It's exciting times, so we'll see what happens. Callum Smith, who was stopped by Beterbiev in January of 2024 and suffered a UD loss against Canelo in 2020 at 168, hasn't fought since beating Joshua Buatsi by decision in a barn burner last time out in February of the previous year. He was supposed to face David Morrell this past April, but withdrew less than 2 weeks prior with an injury. Since then, David Morrell has taken another loss, and the WBO has mandated that whosoever wins this weekend's fight has to deal with him, or the title is forfeit.
In spite of withdrawing from the fight with David Morrell, he's still in a strong position to either challenge Dmitry directly or pick up his belt when he drops it.
So, knowing what Dmitry's options are, what should we expect? After the fight, I saw CompuBox's Dan Canobio say, okay, let's get Benavidez versus Bivol next. Enough of the nonsense. That's the fight. And it would be if David Benavidez hadn't have already left the division.
So we know what not to expect.
Mulling over Dmitry Bivol's options and what they now are, David Benavidez is not one of them, because David Benavidez isn't going to drop back down to light heavyweight, not while he's making the suggestion that they should fight at a catchweight and simultaneously petitioning the WBC to fight Armenian champion Noel Mikhailian. It's very obvious, and it's been very obvious this whole time.
David is done as a light heavyweight.
He's been done as a light heavyweight. In between the Vosdik fight and the Morrell fight, before he even fights David Morrell, he was eyeing a move to the cruiserweight division. So why are people now pretending that he's going to drop back down to fight Dmitry? I don't know why the boxing world, particularly the American one, does this to themselves. Waste their time.
They do it to save face for David.
We're going to spend a little bit of time on that. They do all of this to save face for David for making a pit stop at 175 without fighting any of the best fighters there. They want to believe that he tried to.
The WBC ordered it.
You mean they ordered a fight when they weren't supposed to, because they weren't next in the rotation of mandatories. They knew Dmitry was busy.
Is that what you're talking about?
What I consider a veiled effort to get David Benavidez an email title without having to fight Dmitry, because the WBC knew Dmitry was busy. They knew they weren't next in the rotation.
And they knew that if they order that fight, Dmitry might drop the belt, which he did.
It's all about saving face for David on the premise that he's trying to make these big fights, but everybody's running from him. Now the latest narrative is that an offer was sent from Team Benavidez to Team Bivol, but they haven't heard a response yet. This is the story per Samson Lukowicz.
You believe him?
Your fighter has already moved up and moved on to the cruiserweight division. Anybody knows anything about this sport? Common sense. A guy doesn't move up to cruiserweight, win 2 alphabet titles up there, then drop back down to fight somebody like Dmitry. You're going to be drained. You're going to kill yourself. We see what happened to Roy Jones Jr. when he dropped down from heavy down to light heavy. We see what happened to Chad Dawson when he dropped down from light heavy to super middle. And now you're expecting that David Benavidez, who just fought as a cruiserweight...
Stop the cap.
Just stop it. The writing's been on the wall this whole time. You just don't want to read it.
How serious could David have been about fighting the best fighters in the light heavyweight division when his campaign only lasted 3 fights?
How serious could he have been when just 1 fight into it, he was already talking about moving up to cruiser? How serious?
He was never serious about fighting Dmitry.
Or Artur, because even if Dmitry Bivol was busy at the time, you could have fought Artur. The moment that Dmitry Bivol drops his WBC title, and you pick it up, and he's out with back surgery, the next best thing would have been to book a fight with Artur Beterbiev. David clearly didn't want to do that.
You know that Artur Beterbiev was calling him out.
Tell me that a fight with Artur Beterbiev wouldn't have been better than the fight that David just had with Zurdo Ramirez. It's like I've been saying, this guy's light heavyweight campaign is gonna come and go without a Bivol fight and without a Beterbiev fight, and David's fans are gonna make all these fucking excuses, but in the end, he won't fight either of them, and he won't fight Jayo Pataya either.
Oh, that's why 10 days ago he petitioned the WBC to fight Noel instead, who's even less known than Jai.
So let's establish that David Benavidez is no longer a serious option for Dmitry Bivol, and in my humble opinion, he never was, because it was never David's intention to face him. The more serious options for Dmitry, now that he's back, are either a fight with Callum Smith in defense of the brown belt, or a trilogy with Artur Beterbiev. It's a question of which one of those two fights would you prefer to see?
Because they've both got the same handicap. Artur Beterbiev has been out for a long time, but so is Callum Smith. Remember, Callum hasn't fought since the Buatsi fight.
Those things in mind, I would prefer to see Dmitry Bivol settle affairs with Artur Beterbiev. I think in comparison with Callum, he can still give Dmitry a more competitive fight and a more entertaining fight than Callum would. With Callum, I'm fairly confident Bivol wins a lopsided decision, especially with all the ring rust that Callum now has to shake off. And Artur's got ring rust too.
But he also has the experience from the first two fights to draw from.
Something Callum doesn't have. All the experience that Artur would have amassed facing Dmitry Bivol the first two times, he can still make a third fight competitive. You're thinking to yourself, he fights Artur Beterbiev, he's got to drop his brown belt. Maybe he does, but he can always circle back and fight Callum for it then.
He doesn't have to fight him now.
Go fight Artur for a third time. Let the brown belt go to Callum Smith. Let him defend it against Joshua Buatsi. Then you circle back for the winner.
What about the WBC title?
Well, David Benavidez is still in possession of the WBC light heavyweight title as email champion, and I figure the WBC's gonna let him hang on to that belt for as long as it takes them to make a Michaelian fight. Once the Michaelian fight is made, and once David wins that fight, that's when he'll drop that WBC title. So you're looking at November.
Think about it.
Benavidez versus Michaelian could happen in the fall. Coincidentally, Beterbiev versus Bivol might also happen in the fall. If those fights are happening around the same time, what the WBC might do is vacate the title at light heavyweight so that Dmitry and Artur can fight for it, and they can get sanctioning fees from them.
And since David is fighting Noel at cruiser, they can still get sanctioning fees from him.
So long as they keep letting him hold that belt, they're not getting any money from him having it at light heavyweight.
He doesn't fight there anymore.
But if they vacate that belt right on time for Dmitry and Artur to fight for it, that's more money for them, and we all know that's what the motivation is. So, that's what I expect them to do.
It's all very predictable.
So to recap, Dmitry's real options are either a Callum Smith fight or an Artur Beterbiev fight. And out of those two, I would prefer to see him fight Artur again in the fall. Let Callum fight Joshua Buatsi, then let Dmitry circle back for the winner of that fight.
And David?
David is a fat fucking bitch.